Hello everyone, I'm Rue and welcome back to another Rue with the Books video. I hope you have a beverage ready so you can sit back and listen to me talk about one of the best books that I have read in 2025. And that's not just recency bias. That is Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. I absolutely love that surname, by the way. Contemporary or even historical fiction are not genres I'm incredibly well versed in, but I'm definitely starting to dabble a little bit here and there. I think this is the year where I've started picking up the slack on that end. In fact, two of the best books I have read this year are contemporary or historical fiction. Those aren't really the same thing, but it's just kind of a coincidence that both of them were kind of set in a time before now, so they're contemporary and historical fiction. One of those being Demon Copperhead, which I'm about to talk about, and the other being Utopia Avenue by David Mitchell, which I have a review about, so check that out if you wish. Before I start talking about this wonderful novel, please take a second to click that like button for the algorithm and subscribe to my channel too so you know when I release more content. It would make me very happy. Thank you. So, Demon Copperhead is the name of the book and is also the name of our protagonist. His real name is Damon, but nobody calls him that. This book is written in a sort of conversational format in which Demon is retelling the important moments of his life, as well as what he's heard accounts of from other people, such as the moment of his birth, which he obviously wouldn't actually remember and be mentally present for because he was a little babby. But yeah, it was written so incredibly vividly that it's just so clear in the mind to see. Demon has one takeaway from his birth that he goes back to all the time in this book, and he uses it as an anchor for that. And he uses it as an anchor in his life. So get ready to hear that a few times in the book. It's a book detailing how a lot of bad stuff can happen, but despite all that, it is filled with an optimism and hope that shows people that despite how bleak life can be, success stories do happen and they are possible. The reader gets to follow Demon's life from his birth, as I just mentioned, all the way into early adulthood in this book. If you are over 18 and have lived out that portion of your life, you know how long it is, how it drags, and how much can happen in that short time frame. Barbara Kingsolver takes that approach, making Demon's life pretty miserable and shoving it full of important events. Demon's life is incredibly compelling, but it's also used as a tool to help us empathize with the poor in rural Appalachia, seeing life through their eyes and giving us a glimpse into how those at rock bottom get there. It's not all doom and gloom though, as Demon does have some happy moments in his childhood, primarily with his neighbors, the Peggots. Just as an aside, Barbara does a great job of writing funny jokes here and there throughout the book, which really helped me enjoy the book a bit more, as it's quite dark a lot of the time. Obviously, humor is very subjective, but the jokes did absolutely land for me. There are also plenty of pop culture references and Easter eggs to pick out if that's your thing. For example, I got absolutely gut punched with a random Hunter x Hunter reference. This book is also pretty educational, apart from the main themes and whatever, which I'm about to talk about. There was a tangent about how tobacco used to be farmed, or maybe even still is in poorer countries, I don't know. And now I'm 100% more knowledgeable on that than I was before I read this book, so there's that too. Anyway, I'm going to talk about the themes now. First, I want to touch on the foster care in this book, which is one of the main issues kind of discussed in this book, because it's based on David Copperfield by Charles Dickens, and that book, very much one of the main focuses I've heard, is about the foster care system. Though I've not read this book, so take that with a grain of salt. So with Demon's mum being in and out of rehab due to battling with addiction, which is another prominent theme in this book, Demon has nobody to look after him a lot of the time. So he's kind of shuttled along to temporary homes and temporary families. So we get to see the failure of the foster care system, how 90% of children end up in a cycle of moving from home to home without being permanently adopted and having to fend for themselves. Just to throw it out there, I am not American, and neither am I from Appalachia, and neither did I live in that time period. So I don't know if this was a commentary of how it was exactly at the time or exaggerated for literary purposes. Exaggerated or not, it does show how children can be failed, and it's absolutely heartbreaking and devastating. This section of the book, in which foster care is most relevant, is an absolute train wreck for Demon. It involves him being put through what is pretty close to slave labor, him being practically starved. The one adult that cares for and looks after him during this foster care time, who is with the DSS and is kind of in charge of finding him families to live with, ends up abandoning him, leaving him with someone who couldn't care less in that DSS system. So when enough is enough, Demon makes a kind of final gambit, which involves tracking down one family member who may exist, who he has heard of, but has never actually met, in the hope of something better happening to him, a better future. Before I talk about the next prominent theme, I want to talk about the villains. Nobody in this book has superpowers, so what we are left with are people. Just like in real life, this book is full of good people and bad people. Not that it's black and white. Good people can do bad, and bad people can do good. Just like in Dickens' rendition, which, again, I have not read, there is a tyrannical stepfather. I'd put him in the kind of like power-hungry category of villains. Those that want to go on a power trip. Apart from his mother, who is battling addiction, he's the first major force of bad in his life. His mother's battle caused Demon to learn to stand on his own 2 feet, but his stepfather taught him to hate. His stepfather is an interesting character because it seems there is very little in it for him. He abuses Demon physically, dictates who Demon is allowed to be friends with and who he's not allowed to be friends with, meanwhile treating Demon's mother as basically a doormat and like walking all over her. Because of the kind of physical and financial power he holds over her. His mother is an easy victim to that because she has no self-confidence due to herself being a victim of the foster care system. And her own traumas lead her to become a drug addict herself, and I think that makes her feel powerless and ashamed, and that leads her to being an easy victim. So she doesn't back up Demon or stop the stepfather's abuse of him, which is incredibly heartbreaking because, you know, a mother should look after their child. Another person who is definitely a bad guy in this book is in a very different league to Demon's stepfather. I'm being intentionally vague here, and I don't want to name them, but anyone who has read this book will know who I'm talking about. They are more in the kind of psychopath category of villains. While Demon's stepfather is pretty quickly shown to be a colossal douche, this other character who I'm talking about is like a snake slithering about in a bush, ready to strike. You don't know they're bad from the get-go, but they're definitely doing bad stuff in the background. They have a magnetic charisma that draws people to them, and then this villain treats them as toys to play around with and throw away whenever they want. Throughout the book, their actions ruin multiple lives, all of which are involved with Demon in some way or another. Demon can't tell if they're not very nice Demon can't tell they're not very nice due to his limited life experience at the time, and is the precursor to these life ruinings by introducing these people to the character that I'm talking about. Very heartbreaking. The final villain I can recount in this book is the mythical Big Pharma. This villain is in the overly greedy category. While black market drugs do exist in this book and they are taken and consumed, the main drug that a lot of people, or set of drugs, category of drugs, whatever you want to say, that people are addicted to in this book are opioids. It's not a massive problem here in the UK, or at least I don't think it is. So it's very interesting to read about because it is a big issue in the States, I've heard. Big Pharma in this book is not some kind of like far off mythical creature. We see firsthand a doctor linked to, the pharmaceutical companies. Someone who you would trust to care about you in the long and short term to get you through things and look out for your future. Gets people hooked on pain prescriptions. It starts off cheap, but eventually, once people are hooked, this doctor kind of scams them, charging them astronomical prices to get the same amount of medication as they were before. So yeah, it's corporate greed, sad but true, and it was having such a colossal effect on people in this book. Now that I've finished talking about the villains, I'm going to get back to some more of the major themes in this book. The next one that I wanted to talk about is addiction. It's a relatable topic that hits close to home for a lot of people because a lot of people are addicted to something, or they're close to someone who is, or they've lost people close to them because of it. It's something that surrounds Demon from the get go in life. His mother was addicted to drugs herself, which meant Demon had to go through the whole foster care system very early on in life. This book shows the ugly side of addiction, but also empathizes with a lot of addicts by saying that there are underlying causes of addiction. It could be, for example, unresolved trauma or corporate greed, as with the doctors and the opioids, or a whole host of other reasons. A lot of Demon's associates in this book end up addicted to something. This book shows the sad reality of addiction, but also presents the hope that with an intervention, it is possible to come through the other side and get over it, even if it's one of the most difficult things in life. Barbara Kingsolver does a great, phenomenal job of writing about and exploring addiction in this book, from writing about the root causes to the experience of being an addict and how shameful it can feel, and how you can feel at rock bottom when you are addicted. Because this book is so character driven and also about the life experience, another one of the themes in this book is love. This book is not a romance book, but because most people fall in love one time or another in their lives, it is something that happens in this book. Demon falls absolutely head over heels for this girl. And that leads a absolutely crazy story arc that is pretty important in his life and teaches him a lot. His best friend is queer. This book explores how love can make you want better for someone, how love can cross gender and racial lines, how love can help both parties become stronger, better people, or how love can absolutely crush you. It tackles the theme with such empathy and tenderness. It's clear that a lot of thought was put into it. We see a lot of the characters' stories play out throughout the course of this book. One character for which this was not the case was Demon's best friend's mum, who got a whole chapter dedicated to herself. Her backstory was absolutely gut-wrenching and was the first indication that I was going to absolutely love this book because it happened so early. Her first mistake was falling in love with someone who at first seems charming, but in truth is absolutely cruel and a real villain. It's an interesting story which discusses things like regret, the legal system, and maternal instinct. It's a sub-story that absolutely wrecked me. The characters in this book are written absolutely phenomenally. And I've really adored the majority of them. While most characters aren't really too multifaceted, they are written to serve a purpose in the story narrative. Sometimes they serve multiple purposes, and they do an excellent job at it. I was completely okay with this approach where each character doesn't have like an amazing amount of depth to them, but they maybe serve one purpose or two in the story, because it worked. Let me talk about Mr. Armstrong and Miss Annie as an example of this. They're teachers, and we first meet Mr. Armstrong out of those two. He's written to be a good influence on people, and on Demon especially. No matter how hard Demon struggles to do what he wants and not take the advice he's given. He looks out for Demon, giving him genuine advice, and when he sensed that Demon has an insane, amazing talent for art, he gets him private lessons with his wife, who is an arts teacher and kind of like a music person, just very artful, right? These private lessons lets Demon nurture his talent, and it gives him the opportunity to make a living out of it in the future by getting to like a really high standard with it. Mr. Armstrong is a black educated man married to a white art teacher. Um, as already mentioned, Armstrong serves to be a positive influence on Demon, furthering Demon's character while also exploring the common stance on interracial relationships, as well as the prevalent racism at the time. There are three other positive influences on Demon that I want to talk about in this section too. Those are Angus, Tommy Waddles, which is a funny name, and kind of very fitting to his overall vibe actually, and June Peggott. So first of all, Angus. Angus is like a sister to Demon. She's a close friend of his, a badass, and someone to be able to reside in, despite being the kind of having the polar opposite upbringing to Demon. They just click right like that. They have a natural chemistry, a natural friendship. She does have the kind of like I'm not like other girls trope going on, but it isn't overdone or obnoxious. She's incredibly smart and a bit of a nerd, but she's likable and necessary for Demon, and she plays a massive role in just being someone that Demon can be really, really, really close to, and being the friend that he needed at that time in his life. Tommy Waddles plays pretty much the opposite role to Angus. He is also a positive influence, but from a similar upbringing to Demon, and in fact, they actually met while being in foster care with the same person. Um, so, as I said, he was an orphan in foster care with a success story at the end of the road. He's someone that was able to kind of kick Demon into gear. And he's someone that kind of disappears and reappears in Demon's life and throughout the story. And it's always nice when he comes back. He's incredibly kind, though that leads to him being a bit naive, and I guess that's played up as a bit of a joke at times, right? There's kind of one bit that happens later on. And yeah, he contributes a lot to Demon's success story by just being someone so overwhelmingly positive that it's hard to wallow too much in despair and everything. June is a lovely character. That's the one thing I can say. She's a nurse who moves from the big city back to the rural area because it feels more right for her, and she's getting sick and tired of being stepped on by those big city doctors. She's kind of like a mother figure to Demon, a fairly young one. She makes lots of little gestures for Demon to help him out, or in her own with her own, or like with her own way of caring for people. She's the GOAT, to be honest. She plays a massive role in helping Demon get out of the biggest hole that he has been in during his life, and big up her for that. I haven't talked too much about Demon in this character section. I feel like if you plan to read this book, you should probably discover him for yourself. But he is a very kind and caring person. That's where I'm going to leave that. So, time for the conclusion. Demon Copperhead is an incredible contemporary / historical fiction novel about a kid growing up. I guess it's a coming of age story, which throws a massive lot of struggle into the mix. Demon lives an incredibly difficult life. Even in early childhood, he has to care for his mother, so he was forced to grow up very fast. We see Demon make mistakes throughout life, some avoidable, others not. This book was written conversationally as a retelling of David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. Barbara Kingsolver tackles a lot of themes in this book, such as foster care, addiction, love, corporate greed, the legal justice system, with lots of tenderness and attention to detail. They are all incredibly important to the story and how it plays out, and not just random tangents or afterthoughts. Her characters are easy to love or hate regardless. And I'm not saying hate as in they're a terrible character, but damn, I hate this character because they're a terrible human being. The events of the story as they play out are quite slice of life, but incredibly compelling regardless. I can see why this book has won so many awards. I absolutely loved this book. It took me, I'd say, because I took a pause about halfway through to read my library book, so it took me about 2 weeks. But more so, it took maybe like, in terms of actual full reading, maybe about 8 or 9 days, I think it will take. Overall, I rate this book 5 stars. I loved every moment about it, and this is genuinely a book I will continue to think about. Maybe I need to read the OG by Charles Dickens himself. Thank you so much for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you made it this far, you're an absolute legend. If you haven't finished your beverage, now is the time. Down that and make another one. I dare ya. If you haven't already, please like this video and click that subscribe button. I'm uploading a video, sometimes even 2, every week to talk about all the fantastic books that I've read. Have you read this book? Did you love it or did you hate it? Have I convinced you that it's worth the time? Please do let me know what you're currently reading. I would love to hear from you. Anyway, until next time, Rue out.